What if one injury just changed the entire AFC North overnight? Joe Burrow's latest setback has forced the Cincinnati Bengals into a corner they never wanted to face. A 12 to 14-week recovery isn't just a timeline, it's a warning. In a division this brutal, momentum disappears fast, and now whispers are getting louder. Reports suggest the Bengals are quietly evaluating quarterback depth. One name keeps surfacing: Shedeur Sanders, a young, confident signal caller with swagger and something to prove. Nothing is official, no deal is done. But in the NFL, when speculation reaches this level, it usually means something is moving behind closed doors. And here, where it gets interesting, Cincinnati may not be alone. The Dolphins are restless. The 49ers are watching closely. Multiple contenders could be circling the same rising talent. So the real question is whether change is coming. It's who pulls the trigger first. This is the moment the Bengals were hoping would never come. Joe Burrow's turf toe injury isn't just another weekly update, it's surgery and a projected 12 to 14-week recovery. In NFL terms, that's an eternity, and for a team built around one elite quarterback, it changes everything overnight. The Bengals didn't design their offense to survive without Burrow. He is the system. His timing, his command, his calm under pressure, that's the identity. When he's healthy, Cincinnati walks into any stadium believing it can win. When he's sidelined, that belief gets tested immediately. And this isn't the first time. Injuries have quietly become an unwanted theme in Cincinnati. Every season seems to bring momentum and then a setback. At some point, what used to feel like bad luck starts to feel like a pattern. Front offices don't ignore patterns, they plan around them. Inside the locker room, no one is panicking, but urgency is real. Veterans know the window to compete is never guaranteed. Contracts expire, defenses age, playoff paths get tougher. You don't get unlimited seasons to run it back. The Bengals opened strong, the offense looked sharp, the confidence was building, and then this happened. Now the margin for error is gone. Jake Browning may be next in line, but the question executives have to ask is simple. Is that enough? In a division featuring Baltimore's physical dominance, Pittsburgh's grit, and Cleveland's defensive pressure, good enough rarely survives December. Fans are split down the middle. Some believe loyalty to Burrow is non-negotiable. He carried the franchise deep into the postseason. He changed the culture. When healthy, he's elite. That part isn't debated. But others are looking at this differently. They're asking a tougher question: what happens if this keeps happening? Availability matters in the NFL. Talent without durability forces uncomfortable decisions. And uncomfortable decisions are exactly what Cincinnati is facing right now. Reports suggest the Bengals have been exploring quarterback depth options. Nothing official, no confirmed offers, just evaluation. But in this league, when teams start making quiet calls, it's rarely random. The reality is harsh. When your starter goes down, the backup doesn't just fill in, he becomes the season. Every throw carries weight, every mistake gets magnified, every loss feels heavier. This isn't about replacing Joe Burrow long-term, it's about protection against uncertainty. Smart organizations prepare before they're desperate. The worst position to be in is scrambling when the standings are slipping. And here's the part that adds pressure: the AFC North does not wait. You can't afford a month of inconsistency. You can't drop winnable games hoping things stabilize. By the time you adjust, it may be too late. That's why this moment feels bigger than just an injury update. It feels like a crossroads. Do the Bengals ride it out and trust recovery timelines, or do they aggressively explore insurance while the window is still open? Because if they hesitate too long, someone else might not. A few months ago, Shedeur Sanders wasn't dominating NFL rumor cycles. Now, his name is being whispered in front offices across the league. That kind of shift doesn't happen by accident. What makes this rise so fascinating is that Sanders didn't arrive with universal praise. He faced questions. Critics dissected his mechanics. Analysts debated whether his confidence bordered on arrogance. And through all of it, he kept producing. That resilience is part of what has decision-makers paying closer attention now. Reports suggest multiple teams have placed him on internal evaluation lists. not as a publicity stunt, not as a random backup option, but as a legitimate contingency plan. In the NFL, being viewed as insurance for playoff-caliber teams is a serious endorsement. There's a reason his name keeps surfacing when injuries strike. Sanders carries himself like he belongs. That matters more than people think. Quarterback isn't just about arm strength, it's about presence. When he steps into a huddle, teammates don't see hesitation, they see command. Coaches have quietly praised his preparation. Teammates have noted his work ethic behind the scenes. Those details rarely make headlines, but they build trust inside buildings. And trust is currency in this league. There's also the stylistic factor. Sanders brings mobility and improvisation. In today's NFL, defenses are too fast and too complex for stationary quarterbacks to survive consistently. When protection breaks down, playmakers must create. Sanders has shown flashes of that creativity, extending drives, resetting his platform, making throws outside structure. That skill set fits modern systems. Some analysts, including outspoken voices on national platforms, have hinted that Sanders would thrive if given the right environment. That doesn't mean a deal is imminent. It means the league sees upside, and upside combined with youth drives value quickly. But here where things get layered. The buzz isn't just about talent, it's about timing. Quarterback injuries across the league have forced contenders into uncomfortable evaluations. Teams built to win now cannot afford to waste a season. When that urgency meets a young quarterback with confidence and potential, conversations accelerate. Rumors suggest that executives view Sanders as more than a developmental project. They see someone capable of stepping into meaningful reps if needed. That perception alone elevates him from depth option to strategic asset. And once multiple franchises start circling the same player, leverage changes. The market tightens, decisions speed up. Another element fueling this rise is narrative. The NFL thrives on breakthrough stories, underdog quarterbacks stepping into chaos and flipping the script. Sanders fits that storyline almost perfectly, doubted in some circles, confident in himself, waiting for the right door to open. History has shown that opportunity doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it crashes in because of injury or instability. And when that happens, preparation becomes everything. Sanders appears prepared. The most telling sign of his growing value isn't social media hype. It's quiet evaluation happening behind closed doors. Teams don't risk locker room chemistry or cap flexibility unless they believe there's real potential. So while nothing is official, no trade announced, no contract signed, the momentum around his name feels different now. This isn't noise. It's positioning. And when positioning meets opportunity, the league can shift faster than anyone expects. This is where things stop being simple. Because if the Bengals are even thinking about Shedeur Sanders, they're not operating in a vacuum. They're staring directly at a division rival who already has him in the building, the Cleveland Browns. And that's where this turns into a chess match. Sanders' position in Cleveland hasn't exactly been comfortable. At times buried on the depth chart, at times questioned publicly, he's had to develop under a microscope. That kind of pressure either cracks a young quarterback or sharpens him. So far, it looks like it's done the latter. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco's early inconsistency has only amplified the noise. When a veteran struggles, patience wears thin quickly, especially in a division as unforgiving as the AFC North. Browns fans don't want rebuilding years, they want results now. So imagine this scenario. Cincinnati calls, not publicly, not loudly, just quietly exploring availability. That alone would send shockwaves through Cleveland. Because letting a potential breakout quarterback walk into a rival's building, that's not just a roster decision, that's a long-term risk. You're not just losing depth. You could be handing your competition the next problem you have to solve twice a year. And in the AFC North, twice a year feels like warfare. Baltimore brings physical dominance. Pittsburgh thrives on defensive grit. Cleveland prides itself on toughness and edge. Every divisional game is tight. Margins are razor thin. Now imagine adding a quarterback with something to prove, facing the team that let him go. That storyline writes itself. Reports haven't confirmed any trade talks. There's no official friction, but insiders around the league understand how this works. When a young quarterback starts generating outside interest, the original team has two choices: double down or cash out. If Cleveland believes Sanders is part of its future, they lock him in tighter. If they're unsure, they risk watching him thrive somewhere else, possibly in Cincinnati. And here's what makes this even more intense: leverage. If the Bengals show real interest, Cleveland controls the board. They can raise the price. They can stall. They can refuse outright. Division trades are rarely friendly. There's pride involved, strategy involved, long-term planning involved. This isn't just about this season, it's about the next 5. Front offices think in windows. Quarterback stability defines those windows. If Sanders blossoms into a starter-caliber talent, Cleveland would regret letting him walk, especially if he does it in stripes. But if they keep him and he never fully breaks through, they miss a chance to capitalize on his rising value. That's the gamble. And the AFC North doesn't reward hesitation. Every team is built to compete immediately. No one wants to look back 2 years from now and say, "We almost made that move." So if Cincinnati pushes forward, Cleveland won't stay quiet. They can't afford to. Because once a division rival starts circling your young quarterback, it's no longer just speculation. It's strategy. And strategy in this division always comes with consequences. Now here, where the temperature really rises. Because while Cincinnati is weighing loyalty versus insurance, the Miami Dolphins are dealing with something much louder: impatience. South Florida doesn't tolerate stagnation. This is a fan base that expects fireworks every Sunday. Speed on the outside, explosive drives, scoreboards lighting up, and when that rhythm slows down, frustration builds fast. Tua Tagovailoa has faced heavy scrutiny early this season. Inconsistency, pressure, stalled drives, whether fair or not, the conversation has intensified. Dolphins fans aren't whispering about quarterback concerns. They're debating them openly. And when debate turns into demand, front offices start listening. Now, to be clear, there's no confirmed move involving Shedeur Sanders and Miami. No official talks announced. But rumors suggest the Dolphins are monitoring the situation closely. And that alone is enough to shift the landscape. Because Miami isn't rebuilding. They're built to compete right now. Elite speed at receiver, a creative offensive system designed for dynamic playmakers, a defense capable of keeping games within reach. The only question that consistently surfaces is quarterback stability under pressure. And here's the intriguing part: Sanders fits the profile of what Miami's system thrives on. Mobility, quick decision-making, confidence when plays break down, the ability to extend a drive when protection collapses. That style meshes well with a scheme built on spacing and tempo. If Miami's leadership believes competition could spark consistency, bringing in a young, confident quarterback changes the internal dynamic immediately. It doesn't necessarily mean replacing Tua. It could mean raising urgency, pushing performance, eliminating comfort. Competition sharpens teams. But timing is everything. If the Dolphins hesitate and another franchise moves first, they risk watching a potential spark land somewhere else. And in a conference loaded with quarterback talent, falling behind even slightly can shift playoff seeding quickly. There's also the psychological factor. Fans in Miami crave momentum. They crave belief. When a new name starts circulating, especially one surrounded by rising buzz, it creates energy. Sports radio lights up. Social feeds explode, hope grows, and hope in this league translates to pressure on executives. No one wants to be the team that almost made the move. Reports claim Miami's front office is evaluating all depth options at quarterback. That doesn't guarantee action, but it signals awareness, and awareness is usually the first step before aggression. If multiple contenders are circling Sanders, urgency becomes contagious. The longer teams wait, the more expensive the move becomes. Leverage shifts, windows tighten. For Miami, this isn't just about talent evaluation. It's about perception. Are they bold enough to adjust if the offense stalls? Are they confident enough to create internal competition? Or do they stay patient and trust that stability wins out? Because if Cincinnati makes a move, or San Francisco jumps into the race, Miami won't get the luxury of time. And in today's NFL, hesitation can be the most expensive mistake of all. Now this is where the situation turns serious. Because unlike Cincinnati or Miami, the San Francisco 49ers aren't debating potential. They're chasing a championship right now. The 49ers are not a rebuilding team, they are built to contend immediately. Elite defense, playmakers everywhere, a system designed to maximize efficiency. When everything clicks, they look unstoppable. But there's one position that can unravel all of it in weeks: quarterback. Brock Purdy has been solid, even impressive at times, but injury concerns have started creeping into the conversation. Nothing catastrophic has been confirmed, yet the whispers are there. And when you're a Super Bowl caliber roster, even whispers demand attention. Because championship windows close fast. Reports suggest the 49ers have done their homework on Shedeur Sanders. That doesn't mean a deal is imminent. It means evaluation is happening. And in San Francisco, evaluation usually leads to decisive action if the fit makes sense. Kyle Shanahan's offense thrives on poise and timing. Quick reads, precision throws, calm under pressure. Sanders' profile fits that mold in interesting ways. He's shown confidence in tight moments. He doesn't rush when chaos hits. He resets, he delivers. That trait alone makes coaches lean forward. Now imagine this, a championship roster that refuses to gamble on quarterback depth. Instead of hopping health holds, they proactively strengthen the room. That's not panic, that's protection. And the 49ers understand leverage. If multiple teams are circling Sanders, waiting becomes risky. The longer they sit back, the higher the cost could climb. A contender doesn't want to look back in January thinking they hesitated when reinforcement was available. There's also a broader strategic layer here. If San Francisco adds a rising quarterback, it sends a message to the entire NFC. It says they're not content with almost. They're insulating themselves against uncertainty. They're preparing for turbulence before it hits. Championship organizations think that way. But here's the twist: bringing in a high-profile young quarterback creates internal tension. Even if framed as depth, headlines follow, media narratives build, every incomplete pass gets analyzed, every practice rep gets dissected. San Francisco would need to manage that dynamic carefully. Still, urgency changes calculations. When you're 1 or 2 plays away from a Super Bowl appearance, depth isn't optional, it's mandatory. Rumors claim league executives believe the 49ers could move aggressively if they feel competition heating up. That possibility alone raises the stakes for Cincinnati and Miami. Because if San Francisco decides Sanders is worth the investment, they won't wait politely. And that's what makes them the wild card. They don't need drama, they don't need headlines, they need insurance. If the Bengals are thinking long-term and the Dolphins are feeling pressure, the 49ers are thinking legacy. A championship roster doesn't sit idle when quarterback uncertainty creeps in. So now the board is crowded. Cincinnati has urgency, Miami has impatience, San Francisco has a title window. And when 3 contenders evaluate the same quarterback at the same time, things accelerate quickly. The question is whether the 49ers are interested. It's whether they're bold enough to strike before everyone else does. Here's the part nobody likes to talk about. Bringing in Shedeur Sanders wouldn't just be a depth move, it would send a message. And locker rooms hear messages loud and clear. Joe Burrow isn't just Cincinnati's quarterback, he's the face of the franchise. He's the player who shifted the culture, delivered playoff runs, and gave the city belief again. When healthy, he's elite. That's not speculation, that's proven. So if the Bengals aggressively pursue Sanders, veterans will notice immediately. They'll ask the quiet question, is this insurance or is this the beginning of something else? Even if the front office frames it as preparation, perception matters. Wide receivers want clarity. Offensive linemen want stability. Defensive leaders want to know the direction of the team. When uncertainty creeps in at quarterback, it ripples through the entire building. Competition can sharpen a team, but it can also create tension if not handled carefully. Imagine the dynamic: Burrow rehabbing, Sanders arriving with buzz and outside hype, media narratives building daily, every practice rep analyzed, every rumor amplified. Even if there's no internal friction, the outside noise alone can be disruptive. Veterans who have ridden with Burrow may feel loyalty, younger players might feel curiosity. Coaches must manage that balance perfectly. Because this isn't just about talent. It's about hierarchy. Quarterback is leadership. Leadership is influence. Influence shapes culture. When you introduce a high-profile young quarterback into that ecosystem, you're adjusting the chemistry whether you admit it or not. And chemistry wins games in December. There's also the psychological layer for Burrow himself. Competitors don't enjoy uncertainty. Even the best quarterbacks feel pressure when replacement talk grows louder. It doesn't have to be hostile to be uncomfortable. At the same time, there's another side to this coin. Competition can eliminate complacency. It can raise intensity in practice. It can force sharper execution. Some organizations thrive when depth pushes starters to elevate. If framed correctly, Sanders wouldn't divide the room, he'd energize it. But framing is everything. Reports suggest that executives understand how delicate this situation would be. You can't bring in a quarterback with rising hype and pretend it's invisible. Transparency with players becomes crucial. The message has to be clear. This is about strengthening the team, not undermining leadership. If communicated poorly, doubt spreads. If communicated well, urgency sharpens. And in the AFC North, urgency is survival. Games are brutal, weather is unforgiving, margins are microscopic. You need every ounce of cohesion when the calendar flips to late-season battles. So the Bengals' decision isn't just about arm talent or mobility. It's about culture preservation. It's about protecting what they've built while preparing for what could go wrong. That's a delicate tightrope. Because if they move too aggressively, they risk fracturing trust. If they move too cautiously, they risk falling behind. And in today's NFL, standing still is rarely safe. So the real question isn't whether Sanders has the ability. It's whether Cincinnati can handle the ripple effect that comes with bringing him in. Here, what makes this situation feel bigger than just another rumor? The NFL has seen this movie before. A franchise quarterback goes down, panic spreads, a backup steps in, and suddenly a new name is born. Think about it. Some of the league's most unexpected stars weren't part of the original plan. They were forced into the spotlight because chaos demanded it. Injuries cracked open doors that otherwise would have stayed shut. And when those doors opened, prepared players walked through them. That's why the Shedeur Sanders conversation carries weight. Because timing in the NFL can turn depth option into franchise pivot overnight. History shows that opportunity doesn't always arrive politely. It usually shows up when something goes wrong. A sprained ankle, a torn ligament, a surgery timeline longer than expected, and suddenly a team that felt stable on Monday is scrambling by Sunday. We've seen quarterbacks step into those moments and never look back. Underdogs thrive in chaos because they have nothing to protect and everything to prove. They play freer, hungrier, sharper, and when confidence meets preparation, momentum builds quickly. Sanders fits that archetype in an intriguing way. He hasn't been universally crowned, he hasn't been handed anything. He's had to answer critics. He's had to stay ready while waiting for real opportunity. That mindset matters when pressure hits. Because when a locker room looks at a replacement quarterback, they aren't just evaluating arm talent. They're asking one question: does he believe he belongs here? If the answer is yes, belief spreads. And belief changes outcomes. There's also the narrative element the league can't ignore. The NFL thrives on breakthrough stories, young quarterbacks rising unexpectedly, teams reinventing themselves mid-season, momentum swinging in ways no one predicted in September. If Cincinnati or Miami or San Francisco pulls the trigger, the storyline becomes immediate. Injury forces evaluation. Evaluation creates bold action. Bold action creates headlines. But this isn't fantasy. It's risk. Because for every underdog who thrives, there are others who struggle under the spotlight. Opportunity doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees exposure, and exposure magnifies everything good and bad. That's the gamble front office's way. Is Sanders ready for that moment? Not in theory, not in flashes, but consistently. History rewards preparation, but it punishes hesitation too. The teams that hesitate often look back wishing they had moved sooner. The teams that act too quickly sometimes fracture what they already built. There's no safe path, only calculated bets. And here's what makes this fascinating. We are watching the exact conditions that have sparked surprise quarterback shifts before. A contender dealing with injury uncertainty, a young quarterback gaining quiet league-wide respect, multiple teams evaluating simultaneously, rising fan pressure, shrinking margins for error. That's the formula. Injury creates opportunity, opportunity creates movement, movement creates change. The only unknown is who will embrace it first. Because if history truly repeats, this won't stay speculation for long. It will turn into a decision. And decisions in the NFL reshape futures overnight. This isn't just about one roster move. This is about shifting the balance of power in one of the most brutal divisions in football. The AFC North doesn't allow breathing room. Baltimore plays physical and disciplined. Pittsburgh thrives on toughness and defensive chaos. Cleveland leans on grit and relentless pressure. Every divisional game feels like a playoff test. There are no easy Sundays. Now imagine injecting a new quarterback storyline into that environment. If Cincinnati were to seriously pursue Shedeur Sanders, it wouldn't just be about filling a temporary gap. It would signal preparation for a future where durability questions can't be ignored. It would mean they're thinking 2 steps ahead while still trying to compete now. And that changes how rivals respond. Because quarterback stability defines division dominance. If Joe Burrow returns fully healthy and the Bengals stay loyal, they're betting on continuity. They're trusting that their established leader can carry them through another deep postseason push. That's a reasonable bet. When Burrow is right, Cincinnati is dangerous. But if they add Sanders even as insurance, the dynamic shifts immediately. Defensive coordinators now prepare for 2 possible styles. Opposing teams analyze mobility, improvisation, and a different tempo. The margin for error tightens even more. And if Sanders ever steps into meaningful games and performs well, suddenly the Bengals aren't just stable, they're layered. Layered teams are dangerous. And here where the ripple effect spreads. If Cincinnati strengthens its quarterback room, Baltimore doesn't sit still. Pittsburgh doesn't shrug. Cleveland doesn't relax. Divisional arms races are real. One aggressive move often forces countermoves. That's how competition escalates. Primetime matchups would feel heavier. Media debates would intensify. Every AFC North clash would carry added tension because the storyline wouldn't just be about standings, it would be about direction. Are the Bengals evolving? Are they hedging against uncertainty? Are they quietly preparing for a transition down the line? That's the kind of speculation that fuels pressure across the division. And let's not ignore the long-term implications. If Sanders develops into a legitimate starter-caliber quarterback, whether in Cincinnati or elsewhere, it adds another layer to an already quarterback-driven conference. The AFC is stacked with elite signal callers. Falling behind in that race can cost you years. This is where faith and foresight collide. Faith says ride with the proven leader, trust the quarterback who already delivered big moments, believe durability will stabilize. Foresight says prepare for every scenario, build depth at the most important position in sports, don't let uncertainty define your season. There isn't a clean answer, but there is risk either way. Stand still and you risk falling behind, move aggressively and you risk disrupting what already works. The AFC North has always been about toughness, now it might become about quarterback evolution. And if one franchise decides to act boldly, the entire division will feel it. Because in this league, the balance of power doesn't shift slowly. It flips overnight. Right now, nothing is official. No trade papers, no press conference, no jersey reveal. Just tension. Joe Burrow is recovering, the timeline is real. The stakes are higher than ever. And behind closed doors, front offices are doing what they always do in moments like this, calculating risk. Reports suggest multiple teams are evaluating Shedeur Sanders. That doesn't guarantee action, it guarantees awareness. And awareness in the NFL often leads to movement faster than fans expect. Cincinnati faces a defining choice. Do they stay patient and trust that Burrow's return restores stability? Do they double down on loyalty and continuity? Or do they protect themselves against uncertainty and bring in a young quarterback who's gaining quiet league-wide respect? Because this isn't just about one season. It's about trajectory. If they stand still and injuries resurface, critics will ask why they didn't prepare. If they move aggressively and disrupt chemistry, others will question the timing. Either way, the decision becomes part of the franchise's identity moving forward. And it's not just the Bengals feeling pressure. Miami is restless, San Francisco is calculating, Cleveland is watching closely. When several contenders circle the same quarterback, the clock speeds up, leverage shifts, windows narrow. All it takes is one phone call, one offer, one moment of conviction, and suddenly the entire narrative changes. If Sanders lands in Cincinnati, the AFC North instantly becomes more volatile. If he ends up in Miami, the AFC East dynamic shifts. If San Francisco makes a bold play, the NFC race tightens overnight. Wherever he goes, it won't feel small. Because quarterback decisions never are. The NFL revolves around belief at that position. Belief from teammates, belief from coaches, belief from the front office, and belief from fans who invest emotionally every single Sunday. Right now, that belief is being tested in multiple cities. This situation is bigger than a rumor cycle. It's about how franchises handle uncertainty. It's about whether they lean into risk or retreat into comfort. It's about foresight versus faith. And history has shown that the teams willing to act decisively often shape the next chapter of the league. So now it comes down to one question. Who believes enough to move first? Will Cincinnati protect its future while competing today? Will Miami answer fan impatience with bold action? Will San Francisco reinforce a championship window before it cracks? Or will everyone hesitate and watch opportunity land elsewhere? The tension is building, the conversations are real, the clock is ticking. And when quarterback uncertainty meets ambition, the NFL never stays quiet for long.